what we're going to be talking about today is measurable design, what it is, some tactics you can use to implement it in your teams, and also why you should really care about it. So how many of you are developers? Pretty much everybody, okay. So what I'm trying to do with this is really just introduce measurable design in a language you can relate to and show you topics even you could use when talking to customers and exploring how people are responding to the things you build. So a little bit about me. My name is Melissa Perri. I am from New York City, but I live in Italy right now, which is a little strange, and I'm there at a startup accelerator trying to found a company called Flows By. So I'm up in the Alps in Tech Peaks. I'm a lean product management teacher. I teach product management on Skillshare, which is an online course. I used to work at 2 startups in New York City. One was called Conductor, the other one was called Open Sky. And there I was a UX lead and also a product manager. And before that, I was also a developer and a big bank at Barclays. So I used to work in Barclays right after school, realized I really didn't like the big bank. One, because it took about 6 months to release just a text change, which made me infuriated. So I didn't last long there. And I left to go join smaller companies and kind of rapidly iterate. So that's what I'm really interested in. You can reach me at Lissy Jean on Twitter. I love tweets. I will respond to any questions, and I hope you enjoy this. So to start something off, please turn to somebody next to you that you don't know and introduce yourself very quickly. Okay, great. So in that first couple seconds that you were introducing yourself to this person, you just formed a first impression of them, and they formed one of you. It only takes 7 seconds for people to subconsciously form an impression of someone, to study their behavior, how they look, and kind of judge, do I want to keep talking to this person or do I not? Now, I'm sure you all did fine, so don't worry. But the same thing happens with websites. Actually, it only takes 5 seconds for a user to figure out, do I want to stay on this site or should I leave? Should I go to another site? So you only have 5 seconds to really keep somebody on your site and show them, hey, it's worth being here. And just like a first impression with somebody that you just met, if you make a bad one, it takes a lot of time, a lot of interaction, and a lot of positive input to write that bad impression and to make people like you again. But it gets even worse. It only takes 3 seconds for millennial women to actually figure out if they want to stay on your site or not. So that's 2 seconds less. That's shorter than the attention span of a goldfish, to put that into perspective. So why should I care about all these goldfish-like millennial women? Like, why should I give a shit? Well, it's because they are 85% of the purchase decision makers. So 85% of all the decisions if you're selling something are made by women. So if you are selling consumer goods online, women are your target audience. So you've only got 2 seconds less than normal people to really convince them to stay there. So really what I'm getting at is design is more important now than ever. And when I talk about design, I'm not talking about how pretty your websites are. I'm talking about how functional they are. What's the user experience behind it? So we think of function first and user experience and aesthetic second. How does it make you feel? Can I find the information? All of these things. So when we have bad UX, usually we hear things like this. There's too much information. I don't know how to use it. I can't find what I'm looking for. Has anybody thought about that on a site when they visited it or heard it about their own sites? It's pretty common. These are common things that we hear. But this is actually from a usability study in 1994. So right when the web was emerging and we used to browse things, people were saying this. And this came from the Nielsen-Norman group, where they did usability studies on the biggest websites. This is Time Warner. If you're from the States, you know Time Warner is the devil. So this doesn't surprise me about their site. But people were looking at these big sites like Time Warner and Yahoo and saying, I don't know how to use it. But back in 1997, the problem was you could either use the website or you could use the internet or you couldn't. You just get off it. There was no choice. Everything looked like this. Everything was a little bit hard to use. There was lots of information. But now, over time, we started lowering the barrier to entry on the web. We started making more apps. We made it easier for people to spin up websites, spin up apps, and interact with users. So we had to raise our bar. We had to make it a little bit better. We had to use design to make it easier to find things. And even the biggest of the biggest, like Yahoo, which is kind of a dinosaur, but even the big ones had to adapt or die. They had to start making design to meet usability needs. They had to start responding to their users' needs. But it took 20 years to get to this point. Users have been saying the same thing over and over, though. So today, there's a lot of apps out there. There's a lot of things that grab users' attention. And it's very hard to hold users' attention. There's so many things out there to distract us. There's TVs, there's websites, there's all these fun things we could play with. So we need to use design to keep a user's attention and draw them in. So if you look at traditional design process, we have designers create design, they feed it to the developers, and they release it to customers. This is how we usually operate, and also how we work in Agile. If you are going to develop something, the designers have to feed it into your Agile Scrum, and then you build it and you release it. But nobody goes back. It's a one-way process. It's very waterfall this way. You don't get any feedback to go back in and change. So what we need is a new process for this. We need a way to adapt and respond to our customers' needs. So we do measurable design instead. Measurable design is making decisions in a way that allows you to track the effect on your goal. So a goal for your business or a goal for your users. Now, every time you make a design decision, you put a pixel somewhere, you move a sign-up box, you're making a lot of decisions for your customer about their user experience. So we need to measure if those decisions are right or not. And then we have to adapt our plans for it. So we can use the Lean Startup methods for this. If you've seen this before, it's the build, measure, learn principle for startups. Now this doesn't apply just to startups. It can apply very much in startups. And what usually happens with companies is they start building their product like this. So they'll do build, measure, learn, iterate, get it out there, find product market fit as a startup. But then over time, they start turning into a bigger place and they start creating products instead of iterating on experiments. So usually a company will go, okay, found my product market fit, let me just release a bunch of features if something's not working. User can't find a sign-up box, guess I need a new feature for that. They forget to go back and look at what they've done in improving it. So we use this kind of loop in the design process as well. First, we build, design, and release. We measure our user feedback, and we learn from users' behavior. So when we implement this into our companies, after they've grown a little bit, we can still keep responding to users' needs as fast as startups do, and as fast as they start spinning up by using this loop. This is a continuous feedback loop. And when I say build, design, and release, I'm not talking about build the whole website and release it. Your building of a design could be a sketch. It could be a prototype. It could be the whole website, putting it out there. But it's something to get it out in front of customers, no matter what. Just get your design out in front of customers. Then measure the feedback against your goals. What are you trying to really understand from customers? What are you trying to achieve with this? And then you learn from that behavior and feed it back in. We keep iterating on this until all of our designs are optimized. So when I talk about this loop, and when I talk about changes for behaviors, I'm not talking about an overhaul. I think design overhauls are actually very bad because they're a big batch. And think about big batches. If you put everything out there and you change many things at once, how do you know what made a difference? If you're not just changing pieces of the design, you can't measure if the revenue is going up because you move the sign-up box over, or if people aren't clicking on the button because they don't understand it. You changed many things at once. So instead, when we do measurable design, we choose a theory. We say, we believe changing this will impact users' behavior for the better. And then we start our process. So our first step is to design and release. Our first design is a hypothesis. So it's our theory. If I change this one thing, what will happen? And like any good test, we know that once we release it, we're going to go back and test it and get that feedback and keep going through it again. So we treat our designs as we would any other test. And we make our hypothesis and we do our first iteration about it. We also set one clear goal. A lot of the problems with companies is we have many metrics to measure. We have to measure revenue. We have to measure user retention, reaction. There's a lot of things going on. But when you look at design and you want to do measurable design, try to pick one clear goal. Are we going to do increasing revenue now, or are we going to increase user interaction? Because it aligns the team around it. So you don't have John sitting over there going, nope, I'm changing this because I want to make sure people click on it, when you're trying to target revenue. And we don't have somebody else going, no, we shouldn't change that button because it's going to lower other things. You set a clear expectation for your team to work around it, and everybody stays on the same path that way. So once we launch it and we have our goal, we know what we want to measure, we start getting user feedback. And we measure online and we measure offline. Now, you might be saying, duh. Why? Of course, I'm going to measure online and offline. I need to talk to my users. This is the principles of lean UX. But it's hard to talk to users. So in Italy, we're creating a company called Flowsby. And over the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've been interviewing hundreds of people to figure out how do they respond to shopping on the web. How do they shop on the web? How do they feel? What websites do they shop on? And it's a very tiring experience. If anybody has tried to track down users before, you know you have to get them on the phone, talk to them, and keep going. And sometimes it can be a little daunting, especially if you're not used to talking to people all day. And you want to hide behind your computer and say, the metrics will tell me, but you don't learn from it. And I know firsthand because we were interviewing people, and then we stopped because we said, all right, there's so many people we've talked to, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore, I just want the computer to tell me what's going to happen. So we launched a landing page. This was our landing page. Not the best landing page I've ever made. So we put it out there and we said, okay, if we target people, they'll come and sign up, and then we can learn if they like it or not. And what we found after getting 50 to 60 people signed up is we had no clue why they were signing up for our website. They got this email, we were checking to see if they clicked through, a couple people clicked through, but we didn't know why. We had absolutely no background about who these people were, why they were coming to our site, and we realized we learned so much more through those 2 weeks of calling people, that tedious task, than we could doing this in a day or a month or a year. So you want to know like the reasons behind what people are saying. You don't want to just know that they're doing something. You want to know why if you're trying to build an effective product for them. So we went back to the drawing board. We got the people who signed up for this, and we started calling them, emailing them, saying, why'd you sign up? And we heard people go, I just saw it, and I clicked it, and I figured I'd sign up. You're going to get people like that. That's the worst thing you could possibly hear when you're trying to build a startup. We also got people who said, I didn't actually know what this did, just reading it, so I figured I would try it out. Now that was something actionable. Now we know this doesn't make sense. Let's go back and make it more clear. Let's change the copy instead of changing our whole business to respond to users' needs and see if that can keep going. So the point is, when you are talking to people online, the point is, when you're doing measurable design, you track everything a user interacts with online, but you use that as a starting point to go and talk to customers. So when we track things online, we look at stuff with all of these different things. Google Analytics lets you track events. So every link that you put on a website, you can wrap it around JavaScript very easily and see what events are causing. Kissmetrics lets you limit your customers into cohorts. So you can say, all right, are all of these people who signed up for my website yesterday doing one thing, or have they been coming back to the website often? You can see users who have been on your site for a while, users who don't interact with your site, and it can tell you a lot about people. There's Optimizely, which lets you split test with no releases. So you can go and pump in some JavaScript on the site, change the HTML and CSS, and then get all the analytics on what's working better. Crazy Egg lets you do scrolling. Mixpanel is very similar to Google Analytics. I love Clicktail because it actually records what users are doing. So it's great because you can watch them scroll up, you can watch them scroll down, you can see where their mouse is moving and where they're looking at. So this gives you a lot of insight into it. So these are very important parts to have on your site. But what happens if you already have a site? And this also happened when I joined Conductor. We had a website, and I said, the first day, got to Conductor, all right, great. Where's your analytics so that I can actually study your UX and find out what's going on? I said, we don't have it. I said, you guys have been around for 5 years. You haven't been tracking anything your users are doing? Nope, we just asked them questions. And if you've heard a lot of the other talks, when you ask users questions about why they did something, they make stuff up to explain an action in the past. So they had no accurate representation about what their users are doing. So I fought to get analytics put on our site. And it was a very uphill battle because we had a lot of releases to do. We had product goals to meet. So we found a way to integrate this into Scrum where, it was easy for the developers to do it. So the way we started was we would add new analytics on any page. Anytime something went out, it had analytics on it for Google. But also during every sprint, we add tasks into the board to actually put analytics on a different page. So every developer got a task to put the analytics on a different page, and that only took them about less than an hour worth of time. So over the course of a month or two, we were able to keep putting our products out, but also have analytics and understand what our users were doing on it. So it's a good way to just meld it into the flow and not break up your product release cycle. So once we're done collecting all the analytics online, to find out what we need to talk to users about, we can do a lot of user testing. So this is our starting point. Now, one thing that I'd like to go over today is the 5-second test. And I like this test because anybody can do it to really understand if the users get what your page is about, if they know how to interact with it. So when we talk to users, and you're building a product, not just landing pages, not just startups, you can use the 5-second test to really understand if the users get it. So we're going to try it out. What you do is you show them a website for 5 seconds, and then you ask them a series of questions. So I'm going to try this with you guys. So the next slide I show you, you get 5 seconds to look at it, study it, and then I'll ask you some questions. Right? Okay. That was it. So just like a user is coming to a site and deciding if you want to stay on it, now you ask them questions about it. So first of all, what does the website do? Can somebody tell me what the website does? Or if you don't know what they do, say, I don't know. You don't know. Okay. And does anybody know what you're supposed to do now from the website? Buy something. Okay. And how does the website make you feel? Does anybody want to say like a word or two? Confused? Okay. What's else? Who else? Meh. Meh? Yeah, meh. Okay. So if we look at this website again, what they're trying to do is a venture capital database. But the problem here is there's a lot of stuff going on. So if I was a user and coming here for 5 seconds, I get just as much time as you saw it, and then I have to decide whether I want to stay or not. And I think the big problem with this website is there's just too much going on. There's too much going on over here, and it's not clear what the benefit is for the users. And something you have to understand about users is they scan, they don't actually read websites. So that big block of text is never going to get read by anybody. I actually looked at that website 5 times, putting it into my slide. I'm still not sure what they do, because I just didn't want to take the time to read that paragraph. But users scan websites in an F shape. They read the first big line, they read the second big line, they skim all the way down. So if your website has a ton of text on it, or your product has a lot of instructions on it to get users to use it, nobody's going to read it. They like to scan. So keep it short and simple. All right, next one. Okay, so so that one was in Italian, so it's a little confusing. But can anybody tell me what the website does?
Train travel.
Train travel. Okay, pretty simple. Now, what are you supposed to do now on the website?
It says where you're leaving from, destination, time, date. Mm-hmm. Find out when trains are.
Okay. And then how does it make you feel when you see the website?
Where are we going to go now?
Where are we going to go now? Okay. So it makes you feel good. Yeah? Good? Okay. Yeah. So this website is pretty standard for train stuff. To me, which you might not understand because it's Italian, this up here drives me nuts, and which is why I put Grumpy Cat. This is an express train. Nobody takes an express train. Everybody wants to search for all trains. So every time you come to this website, you have to flip to all trains. And I always look like that Grumpy Cat every time I come here because it's not intuitive. So the point of this one is good website, but give the users the information they want up front. Don't make them search for it. It took me 20 minutes to figure out what tutti traini meant after I typed in La Freccia 20 times. So next one. Okay. So what is it that the website did? Fashion advice? Okay.
The fashion social network page.
Okay. What were you supposed to do now? Decide what? Okay. Sign up with Facebook. And how did it make you feel?
Crazy cat.
Like a crazy cat. Okay. Yeah. This one to me is a little bit all over the place. When I first looked at this and did the 5-second test, I wasn't sure if I should look at the see looks, post a look, or sign up or log in. But I was also like, what the hell does this website do? And I'm still not sure, except they have a very interesting name, fascism. So it's interesting. But this whole point is, it's a lot going on. This is their landing page. This is the first thing you see when you go to their site, no matter if you signed up or not. So how do I know what I'm supposed to do and why I'm here? So the point is, choose one thing for your users to do and communicate your goal clearly. So one thing that you want the users to do the first time they land on your page, the second time they land on your page. If you have a product and you want somebody to continue using your product, make sure it's clear what they're supposed to do next so that you can set a goal and measure it. All right, next one. Okay. So what was the purpose of that?
Sell a product.
Sell a product? Okay. Do you know what they sell? No? Okay. Box. Yep. A box. How did it make you feel? Confused? Okay. Also, what was your impression of the website this time? What kind of company do you think it is? Is it professional? Is it, kind of lower end? What?
Lower end.
Lower end, okay. Cool. So Birchbox sells these product boxes over here, but they don't actually tell you what's in the box on their landing page, which is very confusing. I think it's discover your next everything. Okay, it's about discovery, but what the hell am I discovering? So they give a good call to action with get started, but it's very confusing exactly why am I there if I'm not sure what Birchbox does. But to me, it's very professionally designed, which is nice. And some websites, when you come and they're not good with the aesthetics, you think, okay, this company doesn't know what they're doing, let me move on. What about this one? Okay, what do they do?
Find cheap flights.
Find cheap flights. And how does it make you feel? Find cheap flights. Mm-hmm.
A bit boring.
A bit boring? Okay. And what are you supposed to do next?
Find a cheap flight.
Okay, exactly. So this one, it's a bit boring, but it's very clear what you're supposed to do. This is the only thing on fly.com's page. You come, it says find cheap flights, you type it in, you hit search. Super clear. So it's not the prettiest one in the world, but it's completely functional, and you will not lose users if they come there with the purpose to find cheap flights. You tell them, you're at the right place. Go find your cheap flight. Now move on. Cool. So that was the whole 5-second test. And the whole point of this is don't make your users think. When your users are browsing the website, they have chosen to come to your site, but they don't want to think about what they want to do next. You have to give them the information they seek right up front in order to keep them on your site and keep them engaged with it. So every time you build a product, show it to somebody and see if they think. See, is their brow furrowed? What are they looking at? How long does it take them to figure out, should I click or should I move on? Cool. So once we have all our user feedback, we incorporate it into our learning. We go back, we look, we say, great, what did I learn from this? Let's repeat it. Now, it's very hard to remember to go back and do a design. And usually we just release it and we forget about it and we say, maybe one day we should go back and change that. That one day never comes, trust me. So what I like to do is schedule a backlog ticket into our backlog and put a date on it to remind us to go back and search. So if we're going to leave it up for 2 weeks and gather a lot of data, talk to customers, I put a ticket in there, and we use Trello, up here that says, review my analytics of the landing page and go back and start the design process over again. This keeps our team iterating through design, because otherwise you get stuck in a nice agile, lean type development for coding, but your design process just goes straight to waterfall and out the door. So it's important to schedule these things in so you don't forget, and so everybody knows, okay, that's right, we have to go back and do the design process again. Cool. So once we get this scheduled in here, we can go back and do this loop again. So we learned, we start over again, we build, design, and release, and then we measure user feedback again, and we learn from user behavior. So we keep going through this loop until we reach a design that optimizes all of our goals. And it's important to, and it relates right into the Lean Startup methodology. So build, measure, learn loop to keep going with designs. And you can apply it to many things. I also teach lean product management, and you can do this for building features. It's about getting customer feedback and making products that they actually want. That's the theory behind it. So we need to do this because right now the web is full of information. We're in an information overload. If you're creating something that goes up to users, there's a lot of competition out there for your stuff. So you have to make sure that yours stands out from the top. And doing good usability and good aesthetics and nice design for stuff can really make you a top player in the market today. And you only get one chance at that first impression. So, make sure it's a good first impression. You want to leave your users feeling like, yes, I would go back to that site, definitely. I want to use it again. And good design is measurable. So every time that we do a design, we should make sure that we have these things implemented around it to make sure that we can measure it and respond to it and keep going, just like any other experiment or test that we use. So, any questions?
Have you got any recommendations for a really complicated product?
On a really complicated product? Yeah. Who are your users?
Consumers that are wanting to know which range of the options within this product to select. If you had a pension product with 10 different things you could pick from, how do you make it so straightforward for them?
So
it's fundamentally a complicated product. You can't dumb it down. You can't mislead them or advise them incorrectly.
It's true. So if you have basically a lot of products, right, with a lot of choices. So they come to your site to really find out what are your choices. So to make it stand out from that, like you would do the first page, explain what kind of things you will find here, very simply. So people go, okay, good, I'm in the right place. Once you have them committed to saying, okay, I'm in the right place, I understand what I do next, then you start feeding them the information. So what you can do is put a highlight of each product in a one-sentence thing so they can skim it and say, okay, I need that one, let me go on and read more. So give them very much the front-up basis of these are the highlights of things and let me move on to the next part. Don't just throw all the information at once at them. Then that type of thing will let them skim, it will be very natural to them. They'll say, okay, good, I found what I need, I move on. Or if they don't find what they need in your product list, they'll say, okay, it's not here. Any other questions? Mm-hmm.
Do you know why millennial women have a 3-second tolerance to websites, and do you think that trend's going to keep going down? So do you think people are going to short down to 2 at some point, or 1? Or
I think so. So after doing a lot of research on this, what I was reading was because of the age of Twitter and all this wonderful social media, people are used to getting messages in small digests now. So everybody is used to reading just 2 sentences. If you look on Twitter and you want to read a news article, you see 2 sentences about what it is, and then you decide to read the rest. And I also read an article that says people only read the 2 paragraphs of an article and then tweet it out and never read the rest of it. So this happens too. We're used to getting things in the age of Facebook and Twitter in very small, 140 characters. This is the basis of things. So people are not willing to spend more time, especially younger generations that only know this and have probably never read a book. They're just not willing to spend time, reading through things to figure out what's going on. They want it now. So if we keep up with the Twitter and the Facebook type things, which is a trend, getting things in small information digests, I think the span will definitely go down. Yeah. And I also read an article, which was interesting, and I didn't put it in here because it was up for debate, but it said attention spans in 1998 were about 12 minutes, and now they're about 5 minutes. So on just reading things. So this article was a little like, didn't find a lot of references for you, so I don't want to put it up there. But if that is true, it's because they said it's because the information is going this way. It's like smaller bursts of things with the internet and the fast and everything's out there to just give you information right now that you're less willing to spend time concentrating on something to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I wonder if we find like the desktop old-fashioned way of looking at a web page is just giving you too much space, and sometimes there's the feeling that you just want to throw more information at the customer. Where
Yes.
as the constraints of a mobile screen are forcing the design to be more precise and dynamic.
Definitely. I think that is actually true. As we go more towards mobile, you'll hear everybody say, design for mobile first. And it's because you have a limited space. And it makes a lot of sense. I actually like designing for mobile first too, because naturally I say, oh, you got a lot of space up here, let me just fill it up. Like, throw some stuff there, throw some stuff there. Then you look at it and it's just a mess. But you feel weird taking information away. So they teach you to design for mobile first because you have this big of a space. You got to put the most important things first. So that's also another tip. If you have to design something, make sure it makes sense on a mobile screen and then blow it up to the big one. That's the easiest way to get your point across really clear. It's a good point.
Measurable design approach. I think just one thing to be aware of, or sort of try and avoid, is the sort of analysis with paralysis. Not sort of using that common sense on the way to kind of not dive into analytics for every single thing, because you end up just wasting a lot of time doing that.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. You said to make sure you don't have analysis paralysis. So don't measure just useless stuff. Measure things that can actually contribute to your goal. So that's why I say measure things that people interact with. Because if it's got a point and you need them to interact, those are things you need to check. I wouldn't advise, for example, I wouldn't put scrolling on a page that had no information at the bottom. If you didn't care about what users saw on the bottom, don't track scrolling there. Just track it if you have to make sure users are scrolling to the bottom to see products or something else that you're selling, then you track scrolling. So that's a good point. So too much information could be a bad thing. You have to make sure you limit your analytics to just what can make a difference and what can I change and have the ability to see. Any other questions?
We've done another 10 minutes.
Sorry.
If there's no more questions,
I'll ask. So I like the idea that you said that you put a ticket in the backlog, but how do you prevent your team from deprioritizing those tickets and just like, oh, we're never gonna?
Yeah. So usually I work with the product manager who prioritizes the tickets. And what we do is make sure that if it has a date on it, we put like a last resort date on it, and we make sure it goes into the top. So if you're looking at aging out tickets and they're getting late, like if it has a date on it, it goes to the top. So naturally people want to deprioritize something because they don't understand it. But when you get your team into, which I like giving this presentation to developers, because once you see the benefit of like the design and going back and changing it and understand that instead of rechanging your entire website, it might just be a copy change. If you look into the analytics and figure this out, you know it's supposed to go to the top. Like it's gotta be the most central part of the design process is going back and reviewing things. So it's hard to get used to, and a lot of my teams want to deprioritize it, but it's kind of a fight I put up at the beginning to get them used to it. But after about a month or two of doing this, they can see, hey, I just saved myself like 3 weeks of work building a completely different design or a different product that was supposed to cover up our design mistakes by just going back and looking at some analytics and saying, hey, it was a copy change, or the box actually wasn't working. This happened a couple of times, or the button didn't make sense. These things take like very little time to fix, but usually we just cover them up with new products. We say, user's not doing this, guess we need a new product. Let's create a new feature to get users to do this when it could just be a design flaw. So it takes work, but yeah. That's why I like putting like a hard date on things.
I have a question regarding mobile and your focus has been websites and design. How do you, I guess I'm just interested in your opinion about design in terms of having our platforms are changing in terms of moving more towards mobile tablets and how you can get one design that fits all those mediums and doing that effectively, because it's very hard to predict where someone's coming from.
Yeah, so his question is about the responsive design, like how do we make it effective across all tablets, and how do we compete in the market with that today? And I think it goes back also to what we were talking about with mobile first. So as people keep using products, they're going to start using them more on mobile than anywhere else. So it's important to design for that first, unless you have, there are times where you have a desktop application and people will never use it on mobile. That I completely understand. You design for desktop in that case. But if you have a consumer app or something that people go to, you design for mobile first. And usually there are different features you can pull in to not make it super crowded on the desktop. For example, if you have like an information site on mobile, you could do just the information you need to see, but on the desktop you put in the logins or the special buzz stuff around it. But I would suggest keep it as simple as mobile on the desktop, because people are used to reading mobile and they're going to start reading desktops like that too. They'll spend a little bit more time than they would flipping through their phones, but it's still the type of information, like the 5 seconds, show me my information or move on type thing.
With regards to the mobile design, one of my colleagues said something along the lines of you have to be careful about the page size, otherwise you end up with a massive tower of men. So our site, you're filling out car insurance information, one of our pages is really, really long. Is there kind of a metric to sort of page length or size that should be following for that, or do you just follow what your users do, see if they get bored and go off because the page seems to be too long to fill out?
Is it a scrolling one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know any offhand. Like for things like Twitter, you know, people keep scrolling for information. I think it depends on where you put your most information. So you could track how users are scrolling through the app to see if they're discovering or clicking things on the bottom. And if they're not, and those are important things, you know you have to put them back onto the top. But I don't know any offhand topics. I could get back to you on that too, of how long people will scroll through sites. But I think it's also the nature of your app. Are they coming to learn that they should sign up? They want everything really fast. Are they going to digest information for themselves? People will spend more time scrolling.
With that 3-second first impression, how do you approach getting the user experience across some app stores, just with like static screenshots without uploading reels or screenshots of your app?
There is actually a site called 5secondtest.com. You can upload screenshots of your pages up there and they'll show it to users for 5 seconds and they'll just say, this is good, this is not good. You can split test. A lot of websites doing that too. If you have a different website designs, you just throw it up there. So that's really good for, you don't have to build the website, you just put up the screen and people will say, answer questions based off of it. It's a really simple tool to use, 5-second test. Will, who's coming in now, was telling me he was using it for split testing like 9 different landing pages the other day. So it's very quick to get user feedback on it. Otherwise, I'll take users and just put them in front of a computer and time them and see what they say afterwards. But you could show it to anybody. Anybody should be able to tell you what you're supposed to do next too. If you're doing a landing page, if you're doing a product and you have users, grab your users and show it to them and say, what are you doing next? I don't usually design landing pages and stuff too. I do things that, products that users use in backend, for example, like OpenSky. I had to build all the internal admin tools for people, but I still did it with them and said, hey, you're on a site to create products. Like you're on the page to create a product for OpenSky. What do you do now? And if they couldn't tell me, I knew I had to change the buttons or the information or the text to get them to do it. They would spend a little bit more time, but they were still as impatient using my product that they used every day. Any other questions?
Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks.